Hello and welcome to happilyeducated.com. So back in March, I read an article in the New York Times about Adam Grant, a professor at the Wharton School of Business, who had recently written a book called Give and Take. And this article was basically about how Adam Grant is a super giving, generous, helpful guy, which has helped him professionally quite a bit. And so, for example, people ask him for help all the time, and he almost always gives it. So reading the article got me interested in reading his book, which is basically about his research on this same subject. Now, as I state up front in the About page of my blog, the one material thing that I'm hoping to get out of writing this blog is free books. And since the article suggested that Adam Grant is a super giving guy, I thought I would go ahead and, it's very nervy of me, but ask him for a copy of his book, which I did. I wrote to him and asked if he would give me a free copy of his book. And it was sort of a test, actually, to see if he was truly as generous as the article implied that he was. And I heard back almost immediately from both him and his publicist, offering me a free copy of the digital proof of the book. Now, on one hand, I was delighted because I hadn't really expected to hear back from him at all. But on the other hand, I was really disappointed because I spend enough time staring at a computer screen as it is, and I had absolutely no interest in reading the ebook version. So I thanked him, but turned down his offer, explaining that I would prefer to just wait until the actual paper copy, or until I could get my hands on a paper copy. So, although I did not get the free book that I had hoped for, I was so impressed by his both responsiveness and generosity, and I just appreciated the offer of a free copy of the digital proof that I when the book did come out, I went out and bought a full-priced hardcover copy, which normally for a book like that, I would just wait until I could get it from the library. So his generosity, his willingness to give, paid off for him in the end. And essentially, that is the premise of his whole book, that giving reaps rewards for the giver. He differentiates between three kinds of people: givers, takers, and matchers. And givers are people who do things for others without expecting anything in return. Takers are those who try to get more than they give, and matchers try to give and get in relatively equal measure. So, for example, a matcher will do something for you if they can expect to get something back of equal value, meaning that really they only help people who they think can help them. Now, according to Adam Grant, most people are matchers. Takers can be very, very successful, but usually their success is short-lived because eventually people figure out that they're a jerk and stop helping them. And givers are the most successful people, and this is talking in a business sense, but they are also the least successful people. And what differentiates between a successful giver and an unsuccessful giver is essentially how big a pushover the person is. So successful givers give strategically, and this is in part by focusing their giving efforts on fellow givers or matchers. And also they do what they can to look for ways to inspire others to give. Now, I enjoyed this book. It's pretty easy to read and entertaining. And I just like anything that provides research-based support for the idea that kindness and generosity are the way to go. Sometimes it seems like the bad guys always win, but according to this book, that is not true. Being nice can be socially, emotionally, and financially rewarding. And I also love the idea that giving promotes more giving. So one person's giving behavior can set off a chain reaction of giving in sort of a pay-it-forward style or occurrence, I guess. And so that any generous or helpful thing you do can multiply into a tidal wave of generosity and helpfulness. And I think that's just awesome. Now, the problem was that after I finished the book, I really wasn't sure what reciprocity category I fit into. Now, I was quite certain that I'm not a taker, but not at all sure whether I qualify as a giver or a matcher. And part of this might be because, as Adam Grant points out, people use different reciprocity styles depending on the situation. But still, I was not clear on what I qualify as. So I went to Adam Grant's website, giveandtake.com, where you can take a survey to assess your giver quotient, as he calls it. Now, unfortunately, that experience was completely dissatisfying. The questions on the self-assessment were so transparent and overly simplistic, and it was so obvious what the right answer was, that I could not possibly fill out the questions in any kind of unbiased manner. And in addition, a lot of the questions, it just didn't seem like any of the answers really accurately described what I would do in the given situation. So since the self-assessment didn't work out as I had hoped, I elected to ask other people to assess my giving style. So the website sent a survey to my mother, my father, and my husband, and asked them to complete this similar but different survey on my behalf. My mom tried to do it, but she ended up giving up, as I gave up to on my version, because she too found that the questions were overly simplistic, transparent, and that there just wasn't a good answer to describe what I would do. And I had not warned her in advance that that was my experience of taking this survey. So I then told my husband and my father just not to bother. Now, I think part of the problem was that this survey was designed for business people, and I am not a business person, so a lot of the questions just seemed kind of irrelevant to my life experience. But my mom identified a more serious flaw with this survey. She pointed out that the questions assumed that people do things because, or the reason people do things, they do what they do, because they are hoping to get a certain end result, either for themselves or for someone else. And this behaviorist perspective ignores the fact that sometimes people do things just because they are inherently interested in the activity itself, and not so much preoccupied by whatever rewards are associated with the activity. And so, in my opinion, this is really a rather limited and old-fashioned way of looking at human motivation. So, for example, I was thinking about, why did I make the cello-related YouTube videos that I've made, or why do I write these blog posts? Do I do it because I want to help other people? Do I do it for myself? Am I hoping to get something out of it besides free books? And the answer to those questions really is, I don't know, none of the above, sort of. I do these things because I find them interesting. It's fun for me, and I like it, and it does help me clarify my thoughts about whatever I'm thinking cello-wise or otherwise. So, although I think it's great to help people, and I enjoy that, and I find it satisfying when people send me emails saying, "Oh, thank you for your videos, I really appreciate it." That's not actually why I make them. If I didn't like doing it, I wouldn't do it. So I guess that means I'm not a giver, unfortunately. I guess. I don't know, though. Kind of confused. All right, so this post is already long enough, but there's one other thing from the book that I wanted to point out, something that an idea that I've taken to heart and that I think is kind of cool. So as a starting point for becoming more giving, Adam Grant suggests a policy of always doing favors that will take 5 minutes or less to do. So if someone asks you to do something that will only take you 5 minutes, just do it. And this seems very reasonable to me. So for example, when random people write to me and ask me cello-related questions, in the past, I have often ignored their questions. But more recently, I've been responding, so long as it's only going to take me about 5 minutes, and it's really rather satisfying. So if you are looking to increase your giving behaviors, you might consider adopting the 5-minute favor method. It's kind of a cool idea. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and happy learning.